Did you know that King Charles III was actually accused of being a Muslim once? That's right. In 1996, the Grand Mufti of Cyprus announced that the new British king was secretly a Muslim and that it had happened in Turkey. While it's likely that this isn't true at all, King Charles has indeed on several occasions admired Islam. Stick with us as we take a look at some of the new king's several references to Islam over the decades. First up, when King Charles linked Islamic beliefs to responsibility to the environment and climate change. King Charles has always been a huge advocate for climate and environmentally related issues. Sometimes, he even references Islam's point of view on the matter. The most significant example of this is definitely during his 1996 speech, which was titled A Sense of the Sacred, Building Bridges Between Islam and the West, where he heavily suggested that a deeper understanding of Islamic views of the natural order, according to him, would enable those in the West to reconsider and rethink our practical stewardship of man and his environment. Then, he also expanded on those ideas during a 2010 speech at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, which he has actually been a patron of since 1993. There, he stressed that from what he knew about Islam's teachings, one thing is clear: there are limits to the abundance of nature. These limits are imposed by God only, and if his understanding of the Quran was correct, Muslims are commanded to not transgress those limits. Later in the speech, he even goes on to say that Islam possesses one of the greatest treasuries of accumulated wisdom and spiritual knowledge available to humanity. According to him, the inconvenient truth was that humans shared this planet with the rest of creation, and it was for a very good reason. Humans can't exist on their own without the intricately balanced web of life around us. He continued by mentioning historical examples of Islamic urban planning, such as irrigation systems installed in Spain more than 1,200 years ago, as examples of how prophetic teachings upheld long-term resource planning rather than short-term economics. In fact, the plants listed in the Quran and Islamic traditions even served as inspiration for Charles III's garden at his Gloucestershire house. Next up, when King Charles criticized the Danish cartoons and the Satanic verses. During a 2006 visit to Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt, King Charles openly criticized the Danish cartoons that had been published a year earlier, which had mocked the Prophet Muhammad, and he urged everyone to respect each other's beliefs. In the speech, he said that the true mark of a civilized society was how much respect it paid to its minorities and strangers, and the way that the Danish cartoons upset the Muslims only showed how much they had failed to listen and respect what was precious and sacred to others. This was an important comment to make about freedom of speech in the West when it came to religion, and this actually wasn't the only time the king contributed to a debate over this. Martin Amis, a writer, revealed to Vanity Fair in 2014 that he had argued with Charles when he apparently refused to support Salman Rushdie after a fatwa was issued against him right after the Satanic verses was published. Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran declared a fatwa against Rushdie because his 1989 book was seen to be offensive to Islam. Amis said that Charles warned him that if anyone insults someone else's deepest convictions, he would never lend his support for that. Coming up, King Charles has acknowledged Muslim influence on the world many times. There's no denying that Muslim scientists, artists, and academics have made a significant amount of contributions to the world, and King Charles has acknowledged that many times in his speeches. For example, at his visit to Al-Azhar University in 2006, he said that those in the West needed to remember that they were in debt to the scholars of Islam, especially since it was thanks to them that the treasures of classical learning were kept alive during the Dark Ages of Europe. 3 years later, he commented on Islam's contribution to mathematics as well at the Markfield Institute for Higher Education in Leicestershire. He said that if anyone doubted the contribution of Muslims and Islam to the European Renaissance, they should first try to do some simple arithmetic using Roman numerals. Thank goodness for Arabic numerals and the concept of zero introduced into European thought by Muslim mathematicians, he added. Other than that, Charles mentioned women's rights movements in Muslim countries in his 1993 speech, even saying that they had made greater strides than most of those in the West. He said that Islamic nations like Turkey, Egypt, and Syria had given women the right to vote just as early as Europe had, and much earlier than Switzerland, and that in those Muslim countries, women not only got equal pay, but the chance to fully participate in society's workforce as well. And finally, his views on the gap between Islam and the West. According to Charles, there's a lot of misunderstanding about Islam in the West, and he has always been a huge advocate for bringing the Muslim world and the West closer. In his famous 1993 speech at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, he said that as much misunderstanding there was about Islam, there was also just as much ignorance about the debt our own culture and civilization owe to the Islamic world. In his opinion, that was mostly because they were only taught a certain portion of their history, one that conveniently leaves Islamic influence well out of it. He also touched on extremism in the same speech, where he said that it shouldn't be seen as the hallmark of Islam only, adding that it can be seen in many other religions as well, such as Christianity. Now, moving on to other news. First up, Queen's coffin arrives at the royal residence in the Scottish capital, the first leg of her final journey. Following a 6-hour trip from Balmoral Castle to Edinburgh's Palace of Holyrood House, the Queen's casket has arrived. As the Queen's cortege traveled across Scotland on the first day of her 8-day trip to her ultimate resting place, crowds of mourners lined the streets of towns and cities to pay their respects to the Queen. The 96-year-old Queen of Britain passed away on Thursday at her Balmoral country residence in Scotland. On September 19th, her funeral will be conducted in London. The coffin left Balmoral around 10 a.m. local time, 5 a.m. ET, making its way through Scotland to the official Scottish residence of the British royal family. Before proceeding along Edinburgh's Royal Mile, the procession traveled through several villages, including the towns of Aberdeen and Dundee. Before the historic event, large crowds gathered along the Royal Mile's pavement, and some people even camped there. Next up, Prince William and Harry receive a sweet nod of support as King Charles signed a proclamation. As he signed the proclamation to become king, the new monarch, King Charles III, made a beautiful show of support for his sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Following the loss of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, on Thursday, the 73-year-old former Prince of Wales was immediately crowned king. At the Accession Council held at St. James Palace in London, he was legally declared king in line to succeed the Queen. Members of the council, including his son and potential successor William and Queen consort Camilla, signed the proclamation. Recently, it was made public that the newly crowned monarch used an ink pen and pot that had been given to him by his sons to sign the ceremonial proclamation at St. James Palace. In his first address to the country on Friday, King Charles also mentioned both of his sons. He even wished to express love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. He went on to reference the new Prince and Princess of Wales, where he said that he knew that the duo will continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the center ground where vital help can be given. And finally, Meghan Markle looks somber on Buckingham Palace return after 2 years. Prince William, Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle, and Prince Harry arrived at Buckingham Palace to say goodbye to the Queen. To greet the Queen from Scotland, the couple arrived at Buckingham Palace. On Thursday, Her Majesty died at Balmoral Castle in Aberdeen. King Charles, Queen consort Camilla, and other members of the royal family were inside the palace with the Fab Four. The Queen, on the other hand, traveled to London with her daughter, Princess Anne. Outside the royal residence in the heart of London, crowds of the deceased's fans gathered and cried over her passing. It looks like the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the Prince and Princess of Wales are finally reuniting, or at least putting their differences aside to honor the Queen outside Windsor Castle over the weekend. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think King Charles will continue to advocate for Islam as a king? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.